1 minute, and we will get started. And let's see. Hey, Chris, can I ask you to close those doors a little bit? I know there's a lot of noise out there. As best as we can. You know what, I'm going to get started, and I'm guessing a few people will wander in, but as I'm getting started, let me tell you how this came about to be, and why we're doing this, at least right now. So, as I shared in the message, that we are in the process of thinking about our year. So this is year 25, and we started thinking about what would we do? Rather than just have one event to celebrate the 25th anniversary, could we do some things throughout the year to celebrate that? So we're going to have like this brainstorming idea with some of the creative people who think about neat ways to think about stuff. And then, so I was talking with Lisa Yang, who put the journal together, and our idea was to just have this small session with some of the creative people and talk about some ideas. And I shared that when we have our new members meeting, that will take, 15 or 20 minutes to talk about the history of the church, and that whenever I talk about the history of the church, that I'm always really blessed by that. So the process of thinking about what God has done and remembering some of the faces and the stories always blesses me. So we thought about doing that with the people who would brainstorm. And then she said, well, how about if we just do that to anyone who wants to hear? I said, okay, that's fine. So that's what we're doing here. So this had been meant to be a little bit of a brainstorming thing, so maybe some of the creative people are here as well to think about that. But I want to share a bit about our church. And let me do this. How many people here have been coming to the church for more than 5 years? Okay. How many people, who here came when we actually met at the gym? So this was 20 years ago. Oh, that's a good number. Who's here in the first year one? And was that the first service? So that would be most of the people there are core members. So I'm just going to share, kind of as I do with our new members meeting, and I'll share because I get asked, how did the church start? And I think the idea and maybe the spirit behind it all started more than 25 years ago. So I had been a pastor at another church up in Northern California, and we were going to go to a church conference, and I believe this was in 1995. And there was a prominent church there, Willow Creek, which has since fallen on a little bit of hard times. But the pastor there asked me, hey, do you want to go to this church conference to see what they're doing there? Because at the time, they might have been the largest church in the whole country. So I wanted to go just out of curiosity to see, how does a church get to be like more than 20,000, which is hard to believe. But anyways, so the church was in Chicago, and we flew as, I think there was 4 of us who went to this conference. And before the conference started, there was an opportunity, since the church was so large, just to see, to get a tour of the church because it was so big. So we went on this tour before the conference started, and this guy was giving us the tour. And I remember at the end of the tour, he brought us into this big auditorium that seats, 4,000 people. And he took us to one seat, and he told us that, this was the seat I was sitting at the first time I came to this church. And he told the story, his own testimony, which was that he had been super far away from God, had no interest in God, but he was dating some woman who, although she wasn't really a Christian, it was just her thing that she had to go to church. So that he went to the church, and then he heard the good news of Jesus. And his heart started melting. So he kept on coming back to the church, and over a period of time, he gave his life to Christ, and then his whole life turned around. And when he gave us a tour, he was serving at the church and functioning as a tour guide to tell people about the church. But I just remember hearing that story about a person who was super far away from God, and through the ministry of the church and through the good news of Jesus being communicated in a way that was able for people to understand, that was really compelling to me. Because I had grown up in church, and I had seen some people come to faith, but this was a church of thousands of people who had come to faith. And at that point, I felt like that God was speaking to me, and I said, you know what, I just want to be a part of a church that's really doing that, really telling people about Jesus and doing it in a way that people can understand. And at that point, really didn't have any idea of starting a church or anything, but just wanting to be a part of a church like that. And then over the course of the next year or so, I was talking with Teresa, my wife, and we had talked about this, and then kind of over a period of time, started getting this burden to actually start a church. And at the church that we were at the time, in Northern California, thought it would make sense to plant a church from that church as the planting church. But as it happened for a bunch of other reasons, that didn't happen, and began to feel like that the other option, and there were a couple places that we thought about. One was in Northern California. The other one was down here in Southern California, actually in South Orange County, because I grew up in Orange County as well. So I came to the church that was the church that I grew up at, and I spoke to some of the leadership over there and presented this vision and expressed the desire to plant a church and see if they were interested in partnering together. And they said they did, but they said it would take a little bit of time, but they gave us the green light. That church was a Wintersburg Presbyterian Church in Santa Ana. And through that, then, and at that time I didn't know, I thought, we could do this and maybe nobody's interested or nobody wants to come aboard with this. And if that was the case, then that's probably God telling us that it's not going to happen. But as it happened, there were a few people that I had as good friends that I'd served with or grown up with, and I shared with them, some of them in this room. So the first people that I talked to were Rich and Steph Wada, and then Pete and Lisa Yang. And then they shared with this vision to plant a church that told people about Jesus and did it in a way that they could understand and really be like a biblically functioning community. And both of them said that they wanted to be part of it. And then at that point, I felt really good about that because they had affirmed it and wanted to be a part of that. And I really appreciate that. I know Rich has shared with me that at one point in his life, and he had told Steph that they were going to be at their home church, Wintersburg, until the day that they died. But as it happened, because God had put that on their hearts, that they joined together with us. And Eric Yakura is here. He was on our core team as well. There was one. Why don't you raise your hand, Eric? People were looking around. This is Eric. He's not always here, but he was here planning and doing everything together. There was another couple, Tom and Candace Oshita, and they had been at Orange Coast Free Methodist. And that was pretty much it. That was the core team of people. And we started to get together and plan. In fact, this is the postcard that Eric designed for our first Easter service which was going to be at Trabuco Hills High School. Now, there were a few things that were very affirming to us as we were getting started that, what's that? Oh, and Mark and Helena Chang. I apologize for that. They were in there as well completely. I actually have all the list on my piece of paper, but I apologize for not taking a look at that. So that was pretty much it. There were a few other people who joined in here and there, and people who were there like on the right at the beginning. But that was the core team that started planning the church. So we were looking for a facility, and we looked around, and schools are usually good places to start because they've got the classrooms and everything. But there was no place available, and in fact, through a pastor I had met who introduced me to another pastor, told me that Trabuco Hills High School would be open for to have a church meet there. And then I told them, well, I talked to them, and they said there's a church meeting there at the time. And then my pastor friend that I had just met said, well, actually, that church, I know the pastor there, and they are moving out right now. So if you call Trabuco Hills High School, they will now be open. So that church left, we were able to step in and meet at Trabuco Hills High School, and that's where we began. Now, as we were getting started, we had a list of things that we just wanted to pray for. I mean, there were things like pencils and Bibles and chairs, and it was a whole bunch of different things. We're praying for people, and we also, one of the things that we prayed for was a stage. Like, since it was on a gym floor, we were looking for something that would be raised a little bit so you could be elevated and people could see you in the gym. So we prayed for that, and before we started, a few weeks before we started, we actually were able to, they had a storage container that was there, like one of those shipping containers, and you could rent it. It was the only school that had one, and they said I could rent it for $100 a month. So we rented it, and I went to check it out, and I opened up the storage container to see how big it was and everything. And I walked in the back. I saw there was something in the back of the storage container, and we walked back there, and there was a stage. There was a stage in the back of the storage container, just left there basically for us. And, well, I should say one other thing. Before we got started, that we had a few events that were just gathering types of events. And the first event we ever had was a Christmas party the year before, and it was at Dave Shimahara's house. And he didn't go to our church, and he didn't come when we were beginning, but someone on the core team knew them and asked if he would host it. So our first event ever was over at their house over in Lake Forest. So thank you for doing that. I hope it was a blessing for us, Dave. So I do have a picture of the stage, and also one other thing. So right at that time, and this is a couple weeks before we were getting the church started, is that I had a friend who had planted a church, and he was moving into a permanent facility, and he told me that he had an unusually shaped dolly that I could pick up. So I went to his house, I picked it, I saw it, I put it in a truck. I had no idea what we could use it for, but I got it, and this was the dolly. And then I took the dolly, and I wondered, is it possible that the pieces of the stage could fit on this dolly? And they came from completely different places. We took the dolly over to the container, we put the pieces of the stage on, and it fit exactly right. And then, if you could see in the back, there's the gym there. There's like a double door in the back there with a metal pole that goes in the middle, so it's the width of a single door. That when we put the pieces on the stage, so we had to go through that door to come into the gym with all our equipment. And I said, I sure hope this dolly will fit through that double door. So we put the piece of the stage on, and the first time we were walking through, I tried to push the dolly through, and it went through with a little bit of clearance. It was like half an inch on each side. And I actually cried. I just cried because I felt like, you know what, the Lord is so good. The Lord provided this, and there was a stage, and there was this dahlia that came from completely different places. If you had ever seen that, you would have totally thought someone designed these things together to go together, but that was not the case. And all the other things God provided for us. We started our first service. I don't know if this is the picture of our first service, but this is what it looked like at the beginning. So this was in the gym at Trabuco Hills High School. You could see a stage. We had to put a screen in the back that was all folded up, and we'd take that out to put up the screen that we'd show like overheads and other things on there. And there were times at the beginning that I remember before service that there would be like more people who were on the worship team that were in the church. We said, well, we'll just be faithful, and God will do what God does. And over the course of time, more and more people started to come. And something really, these are really fond memories for me, because there's something about, working together and working hard and doing it together as a team that is bonding, and it's like old war stories or something, and that's what we were able to do. So we would get there early. I remember I'd be like wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and we'd all set all this stuff up, and then service would happen, and then I would change back, and we'd put everything away, and then we would go, and the guys would just play basketball in this gym, and then we would go out to eat lunch almost every week. And part of this was that we really had a value not only on telling people about Jesus, but doing this together in community. To do this, there are a lot of big churches and places that have a lot of bells and whistles, but I so much appreciate the people that we did this together with. And we grew up together and served together and saw God work in many, many different ways. The first time, if you've seen our KFC or our Vocation Bible School, the first one was actually in the garage of our house. So we just invited the neighbor kids and whoever, and we did the VBS in our house. And at this time, we used like an overhead. You remember those overheads? You'd have to switch the overheads with an overhead projector. And so I think Mark nailed up a screen that you can take from the roof or the ceiling of the garage and pull it down, and we'd put the overheads for the lyrics of the songs that the kids would sing. In fact, if you come to my house, it's still there, because I don't have the heart to take it down, because it's a reminder of us getting started and people being in our house and kids being there. And many of these memories are that. They're just memories of God's faithfulness. Here's a picture of one of the first Christmas parties. So if you've been to our Christmas parties, this was at the Norman Murray Center, and we would have a Christmas party, and it started our tradition of having a potluck. We would also eat together, I think, once a month at the school, and it was just a really nice celebration that we've continued on today. When we started, it was like a potluck, and it's been a potluck until just very recently, but I remember at the beginning, I would say, you know what, I'm going to try every single dish that's here, and I could do it when it was like this, and then at some point here, I realized there's no way to eat everything that everyone brings. So that was our first Christmas party. Another very significant moment was this was our first baptism. So this is at my house in the backyard. We have a swimming pool, and the first baptism, the first person that was baptized was the older woman in the middle. That's Sally Cross. She passed away during the pandemic, but I believe she was 72 years old. And I think, did you invite her? So Linda Igawa over there invited Sally to come at the first service, and she continued to come. So on our first baptism that there 6 people were baptized, and I remember visiting Sally shortly before she passed away at her house, and she had, I'm not sure if it was exactly this picture, but it was a picture of the baptism that she had in her house, and she had a lot of Crossroads pictures, and she had told me she had saved a lot of the things that we've printed in sermon notes and all of that. And I was reminded of how God had used, just as what we wanted to do was tell people about Jesus and that they would put their trust and faith in him. And she was baptized at that first baptism. And I shared in the message about how I keep a record, or I keep all the testimonies of the people who have been baptized on the side of my desk, and that those are very, very meaningful to me. In fact, I want to share one more story about a baptism that early on, so within the first year of the church, actually, I think, about a year later, there was another gentleman who was coming, and the church was really small. It was in the gym, and you saw that. But there was a guy who was coming, and he would sit in the last row of seats there. And sometimes when you're speaking, you can tell people's kind of posture and their attitude. But he would sit with his arms folded all the time, and he would leave right after service. So for a long time, I didn't know who he was. Turns out I found out that that he had leukemia, he had cancer, and he was coming to church. His name was Gerald. Elaine knows Gerald over there, and he would come, and I had a chance to talk with him. And then after a while, I didn't see him for a little bit, and then when he came back after a few months, he was sitting in the last row, and his countenance had changed. He didn't have his arms crossed, and he was smiling. And I went to talk to him afterwards, and I found out that he was going through treatment for his leukemia, and during that time, he prayed to receive Christ. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. And I mean, he just was like I said, his countenance had changed, and then he wanted to be baptized. That is Gerald with a white T-shirt, and that's Elaine over there, I think in the orangish T-shirt there as well. And we had a baptism, and he was baptized. And in fact, that summer, I think this is the summer of '99, that there were 3 guys about in their 60s. All of them had cancer. All of them passed away that year, and I officiated all of their services. But it's something I think about a lot because, church can be hard and there's a lot of work to it, and we were really busy and sweating doing all of this stuff, but that God was using that to actually, bring people into his family and change people's lives for eternity really was super sobering. And I've thought about that quite a bit. I've never had another summer exactly like that, and it's so interesting that happened right at the beginning of the church. But that is what happened. Just a couple more things. I have another picture. I think we said this isn't so much a history of 25 years. It's more just right at the beginning. But we moved into this facility, I believe, in 2003, and here's a picture of it. So I knew the pastor who was the pastor of the church that was meeting here before. It was Calvary Chapel Mission Viejo, and they were looking to move into another facility as well because they had outgrown it. So he had asked if we would consider purchasing this building and we were like super small. I think there's about 60 people here, and the price was like $2.2 million. So we said, well, we could try it, but the only way it's going to happen is if God really shows up. So we went along in this process, and this was, I believe, a time when we came here to pray about whether or not this is the place that God wanted us to move to. So we came over here, and we pulled we had like a congregational vote, and everyone voted like, okay, we should pursue this. That's still different than actually purchasing a building, so there's securing a loan and all those kinds of things. So we voted to do that, and we had a building campaign, like a pledge drive, and we did all, I remember trying to get a certain amount of commitment before to see if we would have the resources to purchase the place. And we did that, and we came to a certain place, and it was about, I don't know, it was about 60% of the goal that we needed. And we said, you know what, I don't think there's enough that we have here. And at that time, we received like a few, and one in particular, like super generous donation for that put us in a place where we were able to possibly qualify for a loan. So we were working with a group, Evangelical Christian Credit Union. I remember this, that I was working with a loan agent, and they have this process where they have some group of people who actually approve a loan, and they don't like to, approve bad loans because they don't want to foreclose on any church. So he told me, he said, oh, pray on this day, because this is the day that the group is going to come together and vote whether or not they will approve this loan. And so, we prayed, and then I called him afterwards, and he said, you must have been praying hard because we all said no. And then the guy who was like the most important guy in this meeting just said, you know what, I feel like God is telling us that we should approve this loan. So they approved it, and we were able to purchase this facility. And it's been a great home since then. So when I think about and there's so many other stories to tell, but some of the miracles of God providing, of kind of bringing the right people and working out the circumstances, I'm always super blessed. And I'm going to close. I have one more picture to show you. So this is a picture, and I believe this is Easter of 2000. This is like the most we ever had. So we took a picture. Kind of funny thing is this picture is taken on this hill on the back of Trabuco Hills High School. And when I was talking to my kids before we were actually going to move here, I was saying, oh, we're going to move to another place. What do you think about that? And they said, oh, we're going to miss rolling down that hill in the back. And I said, well, if you set up the church every single week, then we can stay here and you can roll down the hill. But anyways, so I was pulling up this picture, and I just took the time to actually look at every face on this. So I kind of blew it up on my computer screen, and I was thinking about all the people here from the year 2000. And I thought about, what's changed? What has happened with the passage of time? And the first thing I said, man, my hair was a lot blacker back then. This is the first thing I noticed. But I was looking at the faces of the people here, and as I was doing that, I was noticing, I think there's about 80 people in this picture and about 30 kids. So I looked and I said, I think that this is my best count, 12 of those kids ended up getting married, and about 5 of them are parents now. And I thought also about, I think there's 11 people who have gone on to be with the Lord from this picture. And I just thought about that. And I thought about the people who are still here from that picture. And my heart was just filled with gratitude. I thought about the relationships. I thought about the conversations, about going through the ups and downs of life, and that it was something that we've been able to do as a community. And I thought too, I shared in my message about some difficult times when people leave the church, and I actually feel bad for the people who left in this sense, that if you keep on moving around and you never plant in any one place, then you miss out on the blessings that God has for you in community. And I was so happy for the people who have been here through all these seasons. And it's funny, last night I was just flipping around on the TV, and I saw this interview with a ex-football quarterback, and he was talking about how of some of his accomplishments, but he goes, you know what, it's a whole team of people, and he's the quarterback, and so people say, you did all these things, but he said, no, it's a whole team. He goes, yeah, in a game there's 100 plays, and there's all these people involved, and it's a whole team of people who are doing all this. And then I thought about that too. I thought, yeah, it's just like a whole team of people who are called together to do what God has called them to do, and it's a blessing. And some people are out more in the front than others, some people are in the background, but the team needs everyone fulfilling different roles. And God's been super gracious that whatever season we've been at that right time, that he's brought the right people, and I'm really blessed by that. And as I look to, particularly, and I guess it strikes me when I look at the young children, that's when the passage of time hits me the most. I see my own daughter and son, and one son isn't even born at this time, but I see them like up in the front row, and I think about the friends that they made and the foundation that was laid for them here, and the teachers who taught them, and they're by God's grace, they love the Lord and are serving him in different ways. And it's because there's been a great family of people who have been a part of that. So just in closing here, I want to express my gratitude to God for his faithfulness, that so many miracles and so many provision, and I could get really emotional if I let myself do that. And I think about, as I said, the people who have gone on to be with the Lord, and that what we're doing is really the most important thing that you could be doing here on earth, is doing God's work here and telling people about Jesus. And I think about my gratitude for all of you as well. And the people, there's a lot of people who are not here right now, but for all the people who have been part of what we're doing here for a season, and you could ask Teresa, we talk about this all the time, just how blessed we are by all the wonderful people that God has brought in for different seasons. So thank you for doing that. And I'm going to pray for us, and then I'm going to ask Lisa to share just a bit about some other things that we have planned for the 25th anniversary year. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, this is just a small snapshot of the many things that you have done here, and we are so grateful. And I think about the men and women, the children who have been a part of our church, and how you have knit our hearts together for a season. And Lord, we're thankful for that. Lord, would you help us as we look out into the future as well, for the next year and 5 years and 25 years as well. Lord, you said that you have built your church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And that is your word. That is your promise. And we are privileged and blessed to be a part of that. So thank you. Thank you for your goodness. Thank you for the people that you bring here. Thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who is the reason that we're here, who has changed our lives, and we cannot imagine it any other way. So we thank you, and we pray these things in his name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kevin, for that. For sure, I can attest to everything he said was true, because I got to witness it as well. He's not just telling stories. Yeah, and for sure, like Kevin said, I also affirmed the Lord was totally in everything. So many things happened that we could only attribute to that, but it really took someone to say yes to God's call, and that was Kevin and Teresa. So thank you for, answering God's call and inviting us to come along. So with that theme, I have a couple of little slides to show about our 25th anniversary. It's Crossroads 25th anniversary. And if you're leaving, please grab a pastry before you leave. Don't leave any behind here. So we'll be leave any behind here. So we'll be celebrating Crossroads 25th anniversary. The theme that we've come up with is reflect, rejoice, and respond. So that is going to be a year-long theme, and the kickoff is with the journals that we're distributing, so make sure you get your journal. And we're kind of focusing on one aspect of each of those three themes throughout the year. So the first one is the reflect, and we're hoping as people work through the journals, they'll be reflecting on a daily basis on things that God has blessed them with in their lives, and that it will just kind of become an overall theme for our whole church. And so we're looking forward with anticipation to seeing how the Lord uses that and what he does. Are you able to show the slides? If not, I'll just keep talking. Okay, maybe there's just a couple of them. So that'll be the first thing in this first period of time from February until about Easter. The journal runs until Easter. At Easter time, we're planning some celebrations. We're talking about doing some collaborative art displays, possibly where everyone gets to contribute something. And that will be the focus on the rejoice part. And then the final theme is the respond part. So with the reflecting and the rejoicing, how do we respond to God? So we are looking into ways that we can serve in our community and just be a blessing to the community. So we are looking into various service projects. We'll have more information about that and how you can participate that in the coming weeks and months. So be watching for that. If you are not getting the weekly email currently, please see me and get on the mailing list, because that's our primary mode of communication, as well as through the Sunday services. But we're working on that. We're working on the website. There's a bunch of different events, which hopefully I can display for you on the PowerPoint in a moment. But there's a bunch of events happening throughout the calendar year, and we're really going to encourage people to reach out and invite friends, or even invite people. There's a lot of faces that we have not seen for a while since the pandemic. So I think there's nothing better than a personal invite, a phone call, a text, sending someone a note, and inviting them to one of the things going on back at church. And sometimes that's all it takes for people to come back and be back in community, because we don't want anyone to miss out on that. So, yay. Okay, so this is kind of the three aspects: reflect, rejoice, respond, with the journal, and then our Good Friday Easter celebration, and then response, serving our community, which will be providing information in the future. And we are also planning, because Crossroads loves a party, so we're planning a big celebration Saturday, September 2nd. That is the Saturday of Labor Day weekend, so save the date, mark your calendars. We're going to be inviting everyone who ever attended Crossroads, whoever was here in any season over the last 25 years, and John Hahn is going to be our caterer, and we're really looking forward to celebrating that. And then can you switch to the next slide, please? So this is just kind of illustrative to show you that there's just a lot of things always going on at our church, and we're trying to get better about communicating that and making it easy for people to invite friends to those things. So just a kind of a sampling of some of the things we have. Of course, Sunday worship every week. Small groups. There's a series of parenting conferences that we will be hosting here in March, April, and May. Those are really good opportunities to invite people to. Every Friday, the youth, Sacred Streams Women Ministry is very active and meets once a month. And then last slide, please. And Young Families Game Night coming up in April. The seniors have started up a Bible study I saw on the calendar. The men's ministry is also starting up again. We have great Mother's and Father's Day celebration, and of course we have our Camp Crossroads, our vacation Bible school in the summertime. So just a sampling of some of the events that we have planned so far throughout the year. So I encourage you again to think of people that you could be reaching out to and inviting them back. So with that, just again, thank you everyone for being here. It's been an amazing journey. The Lord has been leading us all these last 25 years, and we look forward to many years to come. So thank you for being here, and please help yourself to some of the pastries in the back on your way out.